Welcome to the Ringer NBA Show Instant Reaction Show. We're here to obviously react to the James Harden four-way blockbuster trade. This is the Ringer NBA University crew. We recorded a pod earlier today that'll be out later today talking about a bunch of young players, but we get to react to this. I'm Kevin O'Connor. That's Jonathan Tjarks. That's Jake Mann. How are you guys feeling about this crazy trade?
I'm shocked. I'm still like my head. I'm trying to figure out where everyone's going. There's so many moving pieces. It's really nuts.
Let's detail that for the watchers here. Okay, so here's the details we get for Houston. They're getting Victor Oladipo from Indiana, Dante Exum from Cleveland, Rodion Kurucs from Brooklyn, then 3 unprotected first-round picks from the Nets in 2022, 24, and 26, a Milwaukee first-round pick in 2022, and then 4 Nets first-round pick swaps in 2021, 23, 25, and 27. So they're getting 8 first-round picks with Oladipo, Exum, and Kurucs. The Nets, they're getting James Harden. Simple. The Pacers are getting Caris LeVert and a second-rounder. The Cavaliers are the 4th team in this deal, getting Jared Allen and Taurean Prince. We'll get to Cleveland later, but we're going to start off, obviously, with the Brooklyn Nets, the team getting James Harden. This is clearly an all-in risk here to give it all up. All your future picks, some nice young players and Jared Allen and Caris LeVert, but it's for a chance for at least 2 years, maybe up to 4 or 5 of having a title window. Kyle, what's your first thought as soon as the news came down that Harden was going to Brooklyn?
Well, it's something that we've been kind of preparing ourselves to think about for a while now, right? But even when it came, it's just kind of it's such a huge seismic planetary level shift basketball wise, because these are 3 guys that I think they are 3 of the most skilled self-creator scorers alive right now, all in the same lineup. My mentality, my mind immediately goes to, can you think of another lineup? I mean, I don't even Miami's big 3 didn't have this creative level of being able to create their own offense. That's where I go immediately, and I start thinking about how it's going to fit together. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I wonder if 3-level scorer is like a cliche now, but like that is what this is. It's just so rare to have 3 guys who can create from like 3-point line all the way to the rim. I don't see how you guard them, but then I'm also wondering what's up with Kyrie. Like that's the first thing pops into my mind. I mean, I don't know if you saw what Woj tweeted. It was very suspicious, talking about no matter what happens with Kyrie, now KD has James Harden, and Steve Nash saying, will he be back this year? Quote unquote, sure. That's the part that makes you kind of like, what's happening with that part of this? I guess we don't really know. There's no way to know right now.
I mean, to my understanding, so this past week or so, there's been some conversation around the league that maybe Houston and especially their GM, Raphael Stone, wasn't really totally willing to deal Harden here, and that there was some reason for them to wait until closer to the deadline or even until next offseason. But it seems like partially due to Kyrie doing what he's doing, going away from the team, with them not really understanding what's going on. Everybody's confused there. That sort of increased the urgency from Brooklyn to get something done here. It increased the urgency from Philadelphia to try to beat out Brooklyn, knowing that they were going harder. So I think Woj's tweet there about him alluding to at least now they have Harden is the truth here. I mean, if Kyrie comes back and he's bought in the way he says he was going to be before this whole thing this past week, you have a 3-headed monster here. And, you know, there's a lot of risk here. There's a lot to talk about. Like for Brooklyn, who plays center now? Jared Allen was completely outplaying DeAndre Jordan. And now you lack some depth there. Maybe in a postseason setting, you'll see them go with Jeff Green at the 5. You'll see a lot more of that. And maybe that was part of the plan. But ultimately for this team, having Harden and Durant is enough to be a finals contender if you're able to get Kyrie straight with this team. You know, Harden for years in Houston now has become a guy who dominates the ball, who runs pick and roll, who runs isolations, who has this reputation as a guy who just stands around without the ball in his hands. But look at what he was early in his career in OKC. That was a guy who was dynamic off the ball, running through screens and handoffs, getting himself open for shots without the ball in his hands. And I wonder, now that he's gotten what he wanted, will he commit to that and do more of that in addition to everything else, the brilliance he brings on the ball? Because that's what's going to have to happen. There needs to be sacrifice between KD and Harden and Kyrie once he eventually comes back, if he comes back.
I think that's the key thing, because if you look at all the guys he's played with in Houston, I mean, yeah, Dwight Howard, Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, those guys aren't KD. It's a whole different level. We're talking about giving the ball to Kevin freaking Durant. And that's what I'm really excited about, is that partnership. At this point, the Kyrie thing, it's like, all right, whatever, man. Harden and KD on the same team, that is unbelievable. The pick and roll between those two guys should score every single time. Like, how could you possibly guard that pick and roll?
Yeah, and all three of them, or if they do get to play together, I mean, you have interchangeability among who you could start at the point of attack, run pick and roll with Harden, run pick and roll with Durant. You can, I mean, they just have so many different ways that each guy can create their own shot. I'm kind of curious about like the flow, the movement within their offense, because all three of these guys are tough shot makers. That's like how they make their living. Like Harden, I would love to see like a graph. I know that like Second Spectrum has done a lot of like tracking data on speed and miles traveled on offense. I feel like the Harden that you were referencing in OKC, I feel like his graph has just steadily gone down as he's sort of like gotten more of a, I don't know if ergonomic, but just sort of a management of his movement. He conserves himself a lot more. Durant looks a lot more mobile now too. So just the movement within their offense, that's going to be really something interesting to watch.
Does this Brooklyn team have enough defense to win it all? Or do they need to add more here, with buyouts, through other small trades, or with like this top 7, top 8 rotation here, Kyrie, Harden, Jeff Green, Kevin Durant, DeAndre Jordan, Joe Harris, maybe Nick Claxton's getting some minutes, Shamit's in there, Lualu's in there, Bruce Brown. I mean, if you're going, if you're completing that rotation with whatever mix of 8, 9 guys there are, is that enough? Like, does this Nets team have enough? And for the sake of the question, let's assume Kyrie comes back, and let's assume when it matters most in the playoffs that he's around and he's there and he's present. Is this enough with this group, or do the Nets need to do more here between now and the end of the buyout period before the playoffs?
See, my first thought, now that I kind of like thinking about this team, I think it goes back to KD. I think you're going to need him to be more of an all-around player, especially without Prince and Allen, because those are kind of the role-playing defensive guys who kind of do all the little stuff. But now, like, KD has to guard like LeBron in the finals. Like, there's nobody else to do it on this roster anymore. KD's going to have to guard, have to move the ball. It's all like the stuff he did in Golden State, kind of like that extra, all the hidden parts of his game, which he did before. Like the scoring part, it doesn't matter. Like he'll get his points. They're going to score 1 trillion points. But yeah, I think it comes down to KD for defense and playmaking. And that's me right now. And rebounding too.
Because peak KD, think back to when he was in Golden State, they played him at the 5 a bit.
Yeah.
Peak Kevin Durant on defense is one of the greatest defensive players of all time. If you're taking, it's like Ben has done with his video series of all time peaks, thinking basketball on YouTube. He talks about the moment the player was their best. KD, his peak was probably in those finals with Golden State where he's playing the 5 and doing everything offensively. It's a lot to ask with Brooklyn. Like, is there more that needs to be done here? Or do you agree here that it is largely due to obviously Harden adapting, but also KD leveling up to that peak level we saw in the past?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of like Achilles reparation and coming back, I mean, on offense, you can kind of pick your spots and kind of pick how you attack and things like that. On defense, talking about defensively, him leveling up to that, I think that is a significantly higher challenge. I'm kind of wondering who guards like really immense downhill pressure in this group? Like who is guarding at the point of attack of these 3, and what kind of lineups are they going to have to put out there? I mean, are we going to see more Bruce Brown? Yeah. And is it going to put more pressure on DeAndre Jordan on the 5 on that back line, and how do they alleviate some of those concerns?
Yeah, like I'm going through matches in my head right now in the East. So when they play Boston, right, it's going to have to be KD on Jason Tatum. When they play Milwaukee, it'll have to be KD on Giannis. If they play Miami, it's going to have to be KD on Jimmy Butler, right? You go through these matchups, it's just got to be KD now.
And a little bit of Jeff Green sprinkled in there too.
I mean, a lot of Jeff Green. Like this is like Jeff Green is suddenly super, super important to this team.
One of the real winners of the deal in the Nets is definitely Joe Harris. He's going to get open gym shots around those guys. And with Houston here, everything this last, 2 hours, we've been at this. I don't know. Time is so distorted right now with everything going on in basketball and in the world. And with this team getting Victor Oladipo and 8 first-round draft picks here. Eight. And granted, 4 of them are swaps, but still they're unprotected. And if you're talking late 2020s, the Nets, there's no guarantee they'll be any good by that point. Like, this could be a significant haul for them, and it does make up a little bit for losing what you did in the CP3 Westbrook trade. Granted, you're giving up Harden, but with them, they're gonna remain at least competitive with John Wall and Victor Oladipo and Christian Wood and PJ Tucker. But it's really not about that, though. It's all about these picks, and we don't know what the value is going to be. With Houston, do you feel like they made the right choice here in taking the pick-based package with Oladipo rather than a package built around Ben Simmons and possibly a Maxey in that deal with not quite as many first-round draft picks?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big debate that's broken out. And I feel like there's been an emerging kind of question and thought process about when you're dealing with moving stars. Does it work? How much do you really come out ahead when you have this glut of picks? Hard to say where they're going to be. I mean, I saw, like, what's the latest date on those picks, year wise?
There's 2027, I think.
2028, I believe, was the last one. 2027. So just to reiterate those first round draft picks, they're getting 3 unprotected firsts from Brooklyn in 2022, 24, and 26. A Milwaukee first in 2022, and then swaps in 21, 23, 25, and 27. And those swaps are also unprotected. If the Nets have the number 1 pick in 2027, Houston will have the right to swap that. So they have a lot of ammo.
Hey, see, I even have more math for you. So they got 2 picks for Covington, 1 pick for Westbrook, and they're out 4 picks for Westbrook from the OKC trade, right? So it's like, it ends up being like, I don't even know how many picks they got going. Like 11 total?
It's like a net result kind of a thing. Yeah.
But you seem to favor this, though, over Ben Simmons, Tjarks.
That's the debate.
No?
Yeah, I don't know.
Not so sure there?
I'm not totally sure either. I don't know. Which package? I'm undecided on that. Honestly.
It's unclear what exactly it was in like the final moments. But from what I understand, Houston wanted this from Philadelphia, and that's Simmons, Maxey, Thibault with 3 first-round draft picks. From what I understand, that's what they were demanding. Would they get that? No, they wouldn't. And Daryl Morey wasn't giving that up. But that's what I understand Houston was demanding it.
I think the variable is that they have their picks out to Oklahoma City. I think in a pick neutral world, you want Simmons, but when you have all your picks already out, that kind of changes your dynamic a little bit, because you don't want to be rebuilding without your picks out. That's just tough.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of the other option there, I feel like, you never want to trade a superstar player. You never want to trade James Harden. It so rarely works out that you're trading the best player in a deal. But if I'm a Rockets fan, I got to feel like you're getting pretty good value back considering the circumstances. All these first round draft picks give you so much flexibility moving forward, especially those mid 2020s, late 2020s picks from the Nets. Those could be good assets for future trades down the line. And, having Oladipo, he's looked better this year. He's looked pretty good, not all the way back to his all-star self, but, 75, 80% of the way there. He could even be flipped at some point if needed.
That's what I was wondering.
More back.
Like, what are we thinking? Like, do they want to go for it this year? Because Oladipo and Tucker, House maybe a little bit too, they could all get you more value coming back in if you want to really rebuild.
Sure. And that'll be interesting here. And, Kyle, in the pod today we recorded, we talked a little bit about the draft with Evan Mobley, an article Tjarks wrote about. And for Houston, right now they don't have a good record. This makes them a worse team having Oladipo instead of Harden. For them, you don't want to trade Harden, but there is a little bit of incentive here to be bad in what is a good draft class. So that's, I think, a little cherry on top for the Rockets to have better draft odds in a year like this.
Yeah, I guess the question is how bad, that's always the question, because at the very top, there are some guys that are, like what I call context changing players. Like, I think Mobley's that type. Obviously Cade Cunningham's that type. I don't know that they're going to dip down into that low stratosphere. Or basement. Something that's interesting for me is that, you start thinking about like competition in the Eastern Conference for this Nets group. But I mean, what do you guys think about, like, just looking way down the road, like speculating, like a potential, like, let's say the Lakers and the Nets met in the finals? How is that? What does that matchup look like?
I think, like Tjarks mentioned earlier, KD's going to have to defend LeBron. You're going to have to see a lot of that. As for who defends AD,
yeah, I mean, that's the question.
that's a tough question there. And DeAndre Jordan, he's you better hope the Lakers have Marc Gasol or Montrezl Harrell out on the floor. Ultimately, this is why I come back to with Brooklyn. There's probably more moves to be made there for them.
Have to be.
And they can't be done here. There will be buyout candidates to emerge, names we're not thinking about even. They got to make some moves around the edges to round this roster out.
I do wonder though.
The finals odds.
I'm thinking about like a Lakers Nets finals, right? The Lakers played incredible defense. I mean, what they did last year in that bubble was like elite defense. But at this level of the game now, it almost feels like this kind of feels like the LeBron Kyrie Cavs team where like they just cannot be guarded. This Nets team, like it's just not guardable, I don't think, right? Even with the Lakers defense.
Yeah, the variables are just too high. I mean, at every spot, you got guys that can elite and just improvise at the absolute highest level. Two, MVP level guys. Assuming that, I mean, do we agree that like Durant is still MVP level, like 100%?
Pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not 100%, but I believe Steve Nash had a quote around training camp. He said, if not, 99%, 90%, something like that. And I'd agree with that assessment.
I do think the Nets can dictate styles now. Like you're going to have to beat the Nets 145, 140. You're just not going to grind them down and slow them down because they can score from they're like the Chiefs almost, right? They can score from so many parts of the field. It's not possible to guard them.
Or they're like the 7 seconds or less Suns, which is a lot of offense, not a lot of defense. Obviously more star power here, more improvisational players, as you mentioned, Kyle, at the highest level. And for them, you know what? They're still there. They're still there in finals contention. Obviously, even without defense, without questions there, they could outscore teams on their way to a finals victory. With Indiana here, they're a team that in recent weeks that, better than expected. Sabonis seems to be taking a leap. Miles Turner is putting his name in the defensive player of the year conversation with Oladipo getting better. The stuff about him wanting out was not gone. That stuff was real and definitely was one of the reasons why Indiana did this. From a Pacers standpoint with their involvement here, Tjarks, how do you feel about the swap of Oladipo for LeVert? And can LeVert give more, provided the opportunity in this new Indiana system?
I think the main thing is it's kind of like keeping the machine going, right? They flipped George for Oladipo. They know Oladipo's going to leave. Let's flip it again from our good young player. Because we're talking about his Oladipo back. I don't think he could really be back in Indiana because after he left, it became Brogdon and Sabonis' team, more or less, right?
Yeah.
So he's coming back. He's kind of more of like a third wheel. He was just not going to be happy there. And there was kind of an inevitable divorce coming. So in that sense, I think you just spin it forward. LeVert probably gives you, I don't know, because they have a lot of 3-point shooting. LeVert can slash, take advantage of that space. He gives you probably a little more versatile defender, a little bigger. I think it's probably a net even trade for them, but it keeps them where they want to be. It doesn't, because he was leaving either way, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it gives it, like you said, and it gives you something new to experiment with and potentially like locker room and chemistry matter a lot. I mean, that seems like an obvious thing to say. So overall, I think, like you said, I think it's a net good move for Indiana. I like it. And he's bigger, like you said.
And some of the less major pieces involved in the deal, Jared Allen going to Cleveland in this, and that's a loss for Brooklyn. Jared Allen's been really good.
He was killing it.
Oh yeah, he's been great. I mean, I thought Steve Nash made a tough but correct move in inserting him into the starting lineup over DeAndre Jordan. With Allen, he is another piece of a bunch of bigs now with Cleveland. They look like a team to me that could possibly move some guys at some point, and maybe Cleveland becomes the team that's trading a Drummond or trading even a Larry Nance or a Kevin Love at some point if he's able to stay healthy. Cleveland, good for them to get Jared Allen. Obviously, they aren't the focus in this. With James Harden, how will you remember his era in Houston, Tjarks? So you're a Texas guy, Dallas guy. You're close, same state. You hear it on the radio stations. Like, how do you feel like you're going to remember him? How do you think Rockets fans and Texas people will remember him?
1,000-yard stare. Tjarks is
really I'm enjoying. It's a beautiful day in Dallas. I'm enjoying the view. I'm just thinking.
Enjoying the view of them not being good.
I think it'll be underrated. I'll remember them as like a player and a team that really pushed the envelope, really kind of changed the way the game was played. I mean, he had one of the greatest. Was it 8 years? 8-year run. Never won at all. There was never that much talent around. As you go back in those teams, there was maybe 1 or 2 good players, but they're playing the Warriors down 2 stars basically. And they played them to a draw. I guess for me, it's like, it'd be like if Dirk didn't win it in Dallas. It'd be sad, but like those are some great years, and I respect the heck out of what they did down there.
Yeah, I mean, I remember we did a notebook recently where we were talking about the greatest, like didn't we do something that was like the best offensive teams of the past 10 years or something like that? And the Rockets, they just ran up against like a historically special Warriors team. And you know, you were talking about just like outscoring everybody. People often forget that like those Warriors teams at their apex were at the top of the league defensively too. So it's like you can score a lot of points, but you really do have to stop people. That's you know, I don't know, that's the biggest question looming over this, that and just kind of how they fit together. Yeah.
You know what? And with Harden in Houston, that whole era, I've always been somebody who's defended him. You know, with my co-host on the Mismatch, Chris Vernon, we've argued about him so many times over the years, and I've always loved James Harden. I've always appreciated him as a player, and think that era, I got to give credit to Harden, to Morey, to that organization for being the team going for it. There was a moment when the Warriors got KD and people said, oh, maybe teams should punt the next couple of years. Maybe they shouldn't try to win a championship, build for when KD's gone. Houston said, screw that. We're going for it. They went to a game 7. They went to a game 6. And if maybe a couple things happen differently, if they don't have an 0 for 27, if Chris Paul doesn't get hurt, maybe they make the finals and win it all. They were right there. And they had some incredible runs. And James Harden was the main reason for those runs. And to me, I think Harden right now is a player who he's going to go to Brooklyn, going to have an opportunity to make another run here and really redefine who he is and what his legacy is. And so I look forward to that after some of the slandering he's been through over the years with the Houston Rockets. This is an opportunity to build something new. And I think he's going to show new dimensions to his game that are actually the old dimensions of his game when he was younger in OKC. So that's exciting to think about.
Yeah, KOC, they always gave us content. Is there a higher compliment than that?
Oh my! How quickly do we think he's in like incredible shape, or what do you think he does with his body in the rest of the season? Do you think he like really goes full bore and just tries to get in incredible shape, or do we still see Rick Ross, James Harden? What do you think?
He's definitely not in ideal shape right now. What does it take? I've lost 20 pounds in like 2.
Okay, Kevin, no diet. Now we're talking good content here. What does he got to do, KOC?
I mean,
Kevin, no calories.
My diet is riding a sit-down stationary bike while playing Madden.
Yeah,
I think Harden could handle that. That would be in his wheelhouse.
I also eat healthy, and I don't drink. I'm not sure. You know, hopefully for Harden, he's able to cut out the clubs. Hopefully, he's able to eat healthy.
Well, you go to Brooklyn. That's a good thing. Shouldn't be the hard problem at all. Go to New York City, cut that out.
Health conscious up there. A lot of vegan, foods, a lot of options.
There's also a pandemic happening. Hopefully, he starts, doing the right thing there. But ultimately, for Harden, got to get in shape by the postseason. If he's in shape a day before the postseason, that's what matters to answer your question, Kyle. But I don't know, maybe a couple months, you'd hope at that point, because developing chemistry does matter, and getting him early now does give the team more time to get acclimated with each other.
I'm thinking what you're saying about legacy, and I think that's a good point because we're all going to be so focused on this season. But I think this extends Harden's career indefinitely because Harden and KD, if they can stay healthy, can play pretty much forever, right? Their games are not based on being great athletes. Their games are based on size and skill. That's not going away. These guys can play together for like 3, 4, 5 years at a really, really, really high level. And I'm really excited for that more than anything.
Offensively, yeah, I'd say that's true. I mean, I think that they're two guys that don't have like cook you in space kind of dependency on getting buckets. Kyrie, on the other hand, I think is going to run into some issues. I think because based on what we've seen about like guys under a certain height that are ball dominant, that's where they draw a lot of their value. They kind of do fall off of a cliff in their like early 30s. It'll be interesting to see if he can like overcome that the way CP3 did, but they play totally different. So yeah, I definitely think that it affects Harden and Durant differently than it would, say, hypothetically, Kyrie.
Do you guys have any final thoughts, maybe something we didn't touch on or something that's just on your mind that we didn't mention earlier? Tjarks, will start with you before we head out of here.
I think we got it all. I mean, I think we got it all. I don't know. I think we covered a lot of stuff. Maybe I'll come back. Go to Kyle first. Maybe we'll couple something.
Yeah, the personality fit is just going to be, social media fire for the next long while. I mean, I think we have a team that is going to be so really, really historically interesting in a way that, we take for granted that we just don't see many MVP level players on the same team. It's happened under 10 times in history. I'm pretty positive. So watching that, and then you throw the wild card of Kyrie in there and then his situation, it's going to be something to monitor. Hopefully it gives us an injection of fun that we need right now, I think.
My final thought here is that the name we didn't mention, Christian Wood. Christian
Hey,
Wood
your
Houston.
lane, your corner.
I'm curious to see how his production changes, because he's put up borderline all-star numbers so far this season, partially playing off of Harden in that pick and roll. How does his usage change with Victor Oladipo and John Wall dominating the ball more often? Because he's been one of the bright spots on that team. Because, despite Houston having a 3-6 start, this team isn't a team without any promise. Wood looks terrific. John Wall looks more like his pre-injury self. You get guys like Jayshawn Tate who are coming off the bench and looking really good. This Houston team, this isn't, some dumpster fire here, despite what just happened with James Harden. There's still some talent on this team that I look at and I get excited about. And so with the Houston Rockets, whenever they're back, and they're all, back on the court with, now Victor Oladipo, I'm excited, dude. I think this team is still going to be competitive. They're not one of the best teams in the West. They're on the play-in tournament bubble probably at best. But hey, man, it's not always about the W's and L's. Sometimes it's just about the development. And that's why with this podcast we're doing, Ringer NBA University, I'm super, super excited to be doing this with you guys the whole rest of the season. Every other Wednesday we'll be on. And earlier today, before the Harden and news broke and before this really got real, we recorded a whole show, like an hour, 15 minutes long, talking about rookies, talking about the Nets and the Knicks and some of their younger guys. Obviously, that Nets conversation changes now. And we also talked about the NBA draft with an article you wrote on the Ringer today, Tjarks, about Evan Mobley, a USC center who could go number 1. So hope everybody that's watching us live right now listens to that, and everybody who's listening to this on the podcast in the future when it's up, keep on listening to the show. We'll be back every other Wednesday with Ringer NBA University. I'm Kevin O'Connor. That's Jonathan Tjarks and Jay Kyle Mann. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
That was a plug. That was elite.
You really circled it back.
Way to go. This is why it makes the big bucks, folks. That was incredible. Landed that plane.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. What a day for the NBA.
All right, fun stuff. All right, that was good. I enjoyed that. All right, so I'm sending audio to Isaiah, right?
That was fun.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's me.
Cool.
That was
All
really
right, y'all.
fun. Cool.
Good stuff. Thanks for sending us up, everyone. Appreciate that.
I immediately slacked Kevin on that transition because it was just so pure, so smooth.
That was great.
Such a pro.
Did you see my circle thing? You brought it all the way around.
I was just like watching James Harden cook in isolation. You're just like, that's a master right there.
Wow.
Master
Just watch him
work.
cook. Watch him go. Gordon
All right,
Ramsay.
y'all.
Amazing.
Thanks for getting us all set up. We appreciate it.